Welcome to Creating SPG Assessments Part 3 playlist short series of asynchronous tutorials. This is the third tutorial for this playlist. All resources for this session can be found at the link below highlighted in pink. Additional approaches to creating assessments from a proficiency scale. The proficiency scale is at the heart of every assessment you will create for your student learners. Remember, in a standards-based learning environment, classroom assessment is anything the teacher uses to collect evidence of student learning, and classroom assessments can be obtrusive, unobtrusive, and student-generated. This tutorial is going to recommend 2 ways to think about approaching today's task. In a standards-based learning environment, an important first step is to find out where a student lies on a proficiency scale at the start of instruction by giving a pre-assessment. This will help guide teachers' instruction, and knowing where each learner is in their understanding can ensure the teacher can effectively meet the needs of each student. Your pre-assessment can also be the same as your post-assessment or more formal end-of-unit assessment. If you are familiar with backward design, creating a pre-assessment or end-of-unit assessment aligned to your proficiency scale before instruction begins, it becomes the blueprint for planning your lesson experiences for the entire unit. If you are comfortable to create an SPG assessment around the entire scale, these next steps can guide you to do this. First, decide on which scale is next to teach according to the recommended pacing guide for your year level and content area. For example, consider this 4th grade math teacher who uses a comparing fractions proficiency scale to determine what knowledge and skills her students should master during a particular unit. The score 2, 3, and 4 levels of such a scale are showing on the slide in view. First, she plans how many items she will need for each level of the scale and decides on 4 fill-in-the-blank assessment items at the score 2 level, 4 short answer assessment items at the score 3 level, and 1 assessment item at the score 4 level that asks students to apply a concept in a real world situation. As mentioned in tutorial 1, the appropriate assessment item types should be considered for each score band on a proficiency scale. Next, the teacher creates assessment items representing the various levels of thinking. Take a minute and match the assessment items in the right column with the content and skills displayed under the scale descriptor column. Will the assessment items measure with accuracy what students need to learn for this proficiency scale? Absolutely. The assessment items should consider all the criteria illustrated in the assessment item review checklist we discussed in tutorial number 2. The first criteria on the list is of the utmost importance. It reads, the assessment item measures the concepts and skills on the proficiency scale for the score level. If teachers do not interpret the content and skills with accuracy, then a teacher may grade an activity, task, or assessment item that has nothing to do with the actual content on the proficiency scale. For example, if a language arts teacher assessing a student's ability to compare and contrast different types of nonfiction asks students to create a costume for one of the characters in a nonfiction text and present the costume to the class, there is a mismatch between the assessment and the proficiency scale. As mentioned earlier, if you create a pre-assessment or end-of-unit assessment aligned to your proficiency scale before instruction begins, it becomes the blueprint for planning your lesson experiences for the entire unit. But let's say you're not quite comfortable with creating a pre or post-assessment around the entire scale right now so early in the SPG journey. Here's another approach you can take. Consider the 5th grade science teacher who is starting a unit on the reflection of light. She has decided to go the unit planning route. Therefore, she decides to chunk and sequence the order in which she will teach the bite-sized or bulleted ideas. She then creates a series of tasks or assessments aligned with the content and skills on the proficiency scale. Let's look at one lesson for this unit of study and the way she approaches SPG assessment creation. She chose the underlying learning goals to create her lesson. At the score 3 level, the teacher focuses on students investigating how beams or rays of light can change direction and be reflected by surfaces, including mirrors. And at the score 2 level for the same learner goal, she focuses on recognizing that different materials reflect light in different ways. Shiny surfaces, example, mirrors reflect well. Recalls that light travels in straight lines but can change direction. And some of the important vocabulary at the score 2 are light, beam, rays, reflect, reflection, surface, and mirror. It is important to be knowledgeable about the content that you teach so that there is no misinterpretation of what students have to learn and no chance of misalignment between the assessment item and the knowledge and skills on the scale. This is why, if you are new to the content, collaborating with others that are more familiar with the content will enhance the quality of your assessment items. Of course, continue to use the assessment item review checklist shown in tutorial number 2 to guide you as well. The teacher lifts the goal statements from the science proficiency scale and puts it in this alignment chart or the skinny lesson plan. Notice she lines them up with the corresponding score levels. Then she creates a learning intention, a broad statement about what students should know and be able to do for this lesson. The teacher creates the success criteria. Notice there are 2 success criteria for the score 2 knowledge and 1 success criteria for the score 3 level skill the student should master. And of course, the student creates a this is because statement to communicate why students are learning the specific content and skills for this lesson. Next, the teacher aligns the learning intention and success criteria with the instructional activities and assessment tasks. The teacher uses the assessment item review checklist to guide her SPG assessment creation. The assessment items for the beginning of the lesson is question and answer. Remember, this assessment type is appropriate for all score levels found on a proficiency scale. Notice the bolded numbers in black, so 1, 2, and 3, show what success criteria the assessment items are aligned with. 1, 2, and 3. Let's look at the beginning assessment. The assessment items at the beginning part of the lesson require the students to make a prediction. This is followed by a quick discussion on score 2 level content. How does light travel? What does reflection mean? Can light be reflected? What types of surfaces reflect light? This is an example of the assessment task. The middle part of the lesson illustrates an open-ended extended response assessment item or task around an investigation aligned with score 3 level content and skills on the proficiency scale. Number 3, I can use a mirror to change the direction of a light beam. This is the corresponding activity or task or assignment. The assessment items at the middle part of the lesson require the students to demonstrate how a mirror can be used to change the direction of light, and they must write about it on their log sheet. The ending, the teacher recaps the success criteria. Notice the assessment tasks are also aligned with the learning intention and success criteria. And in several cases, it is embedded throughout all parts of the instruction. So the beginning, middle, and end, the teacher is asking probing questions, making observations of students' responses during the investigation. So all three success criteria that's aligned with the proficiency scale are here or are being assessed. And then there's an exit activity that assesses all three success criteria that are aligned with the proficiency scale. The assessment items at the end part of the lesson require students to share what they learned in a small group and whole group discussion. And then they must give a short answer response on an exit card. The alignment chart or skinny lesson plan should also include differentiation for advanced students and students that struggle. Here's an example of an advanced task or an application that goes beyond the grade level expectation. On January the 20th, 2020, the SBG Steering Committee prepared a participant packet during the system professional development called Planning for Standards-Based Instruction. Please refer to this booklet if you want more context with regards to unit planning and aligning classroom assessments, obtrusive, unobtrusive, and student-generated, to your proficiency scales. An electronic copy of this booklet can be found at the link below, highlighted in pink. Let's take a quick journey through this resource to see how it can be used to determine what things should be considered when classroom assessments need to be created around our proficiency scales. Here is the same P5 science scale, reflection of light, and a scientific inquiry proficiency scale, which this teacher will teach alongside the content scale. The first thing the teacher does is determine which learning goals on the proficiency scale will be taught together and in what order the learning goals will be taught. In this example, she color codes. In this example, she uses letters to chunk the bite-sized ideas in the way she would teach them. Then she uses the recommended pacing guide to see how many lesson days have been suggested. It will take approximately 13 lesson days to complete both proficiency scales. Next, the teacher determines how many lesson days should be dedicated to each chunk of learning goals. Remember, these are the bite-sized ideas or behaviors at the score 2, 3, and 4 level on the proficiency scale. And finally, she creates a unit plan for the content and skills students have to learn for both of those skills within the suggested 13-day time frame. Here's an example of Lance King's unit plan framework. And the second example is a modification of Marzano's unit plan framework. Now it is your turn to try creating your own SBG assessments. Have fun.